What? What are you... How am I supposed to help with that? I don't... What? Hi? I guess? I'm sorry you got spoiled, buddy. Uh... Goodness, now I completely forgot what I was... Hello there! Nice to see you. Sorry, I'm... Ads are gonna happen in a second. Yes, I did. I'm pissed as hell. I'm so angry about it. Of course, immediately went and removed it as soon as it became an option. And posted it everywhere I could think of to post it. So, yeah, that's fucking... Oh my god. So many thoughts. So many thoughts about that. I know we're about to go into an ad. They usually start at the beginning. I apologize for that. Yeah, it's been a day. Um, I'm trying to get some last minute promos in where I can. Um, there aren't a whole lot of options. I don't know enough of the community to feel comfortable enough to really post everywhere. And when I do, I always feel bad about it. Oh, okay. If you had ads, thank you for sticking around. Did Z, did it not give you... Did you not know that this was a thing that was going to happen in your game? Or... I don't even... I'm sorry. I don't even know what to say to that. I'm so sorry. Oh, okay. That's the best I could do with the little bit that I could do. I also need to open up the moderator screen just in case I see... I can words. No, like them. And his introductory cutscene was naked. And he's... Oh, okay. You're frazzled. Alright. That makes sense. Did the game not tell you that was a thing that was gonna happen? I am confused. Okay. Phone, everything is on mute. Everything is on mute that needs to be... Bro, you knew what you were signing up for. You can't even... I'm not even here to listen to your complaints. I'm sorry. Oh, jeez. Yeah, alright, whatever. The fucking... Sometimes I really wish... There we go. What are you wowing about? Come on, don't hijack my stuff. You got me in a state now. I don't even know what the hell I'm supposed to be doing. Okay. What happened today? I got really turned around thinking that today was the 13th and not the 12th. Yesterday, I had a similar issue where I thought it was Monday when it was actually Tuesday. This is a carryover from last week. Days, time is an illusion, I'm coming to realize. But part of the mix-up was that I thought I had physical therapy at 3 o'clock. And it turned out that that was not the case. It's 3 o'clock tomorrow, not today. So... What am I doing? I got all flustered thinking that I was going to be late and then wondering why my transportation arrangement didn't call me. And of course they wouldn't call me because it's not until tomorrow. So they would call me tonight, not tomorrow. And I had gone ahead and canceled the appointment initially, thinking that I was going to miss it because my transport hadn't happened because my spouse wasn't able to get the car, and I don't really have the funds to pay for like a Lyft or something to get there. I'm really, really in a bad place financially right now. So I have to be careful with my choices. Going to physical therapy would have been nice. But if it was one of those things where I had to pick between that and paying a bill, then I'm going to pick the paying the bill, and I'll just, suffer through not being able to do the physical therapy this week. That was what happened last week. Wasn't that I didn't go to physical therapy last week. It was that I didn't have the active part of my physical therapy last week. Last week, I went and saw the person who oversees my physical therapy, and she helped me a little bit with some manipulation stuff. So it wasn't active. I felt like I lacked for activity last week because of that. And I meant to go and go to the gym or something. But again, with the whole having to get out there and stuff, that didn't end up happening. So I was going to try and do something else, like do an extra thing sometime this week to try and make up for it. But now it's freaking Wednesday. Tomorrow's Thursday. I know how days of the week work. But so it's just, I'm really, I guess, discombobulated is probably close to what it is. I'm just really discombobulated, and there's a lot of stuff that's going on here. And sleep has been kind of a weird thing for me. I found out that my stepson and his girlfriend, who have been living with us, they got approved for the apartment they want to move into. So they are officially going to be gone at least by the end of the month. That comes with its whole thing. We already spent a lot of time talking about it, so I don't want to go into that again and just draw it out and talk about it more. I'm really kind of sick and tired about talking about it, honestly. I appreciated being told directly that it was happening rather than hearing it through the pipeline. And I was able to be neutral about it, somewhat positive maybe. I wasn't negative to their faces. But the whole thing was, it is definitely one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'm happy for you, but it's at my own cost, basically. And this is something that I've already been talking about with multiple different therapy-related adjacent things. I talked with my actual therapist. I talked with my psychiatrist about it today. I talked about it a little bit with a couple different friends last week. I was supposed to have personal talk therapy on Monday, but it got canceled because my therapist is not feeling well. So I didn't want to try and insist or anything like that. And she also was booked out for the rest of the week, so I can't really talk to her the rest of the week. Not that there's much left of the week. So, and I miss that. I could have used that. So I did end up talking quite a lot today with my psychiatrist about what was going on. Thankfully, she didn't have anybody after me, so I didn't have to worry about that. And I had a lot to say. because I hadn't seen her since July, I think. It's again one of those situations where it's just like I've been talking to a lot of different people. And I'm not 100% sure who I've told and in what detail and all of that. I just know I'm tired and I'm stressed out. On the way home Sunday, this is the thing that I hadn't talked about. I got a write-up at my work on Sunday. It kind of came out of the blue. So I've been under a lot of stress because of stuff happening at home with finances, with my roommate situation, all of that. It's been leaching into my mood at work now, not just in my day-to-day life at home. So I've been very short-tempered and agitated and have not really been able to keep it locked back and locked in. That's part of the problem with being neurodivergent. So I had an incident with a customer where, in my defense, they really behaved quite foolishly, and they thought the person who was supposed to be driving their shuttle van left without them. They didn't get on the shuttle van, and when the next shuttle van came up, they went up to the driver to say, "Oh, so you're my driver," and this guy was just coming back from his shift, like finishing off his route. So he brought him in to talk to me, and I got really flustered and frustrated trying to figure out what the hell was going on, trying to get a hold of the driver to get him to turn around. He didn't hear me. He couldn't, whatever the case may be. I don't 100% know, but I did swear under my breath with enough volume that either the customer and or the driver that brought him in narked on me. And the reason that my manager didn't bring it up to me directly was because it took him a week to get a hold of this person, to get all the details and to talk with the driver, the two drivers and all of that stuff. And it got combined with the one from the week back on last Sunday. Not the Sunday that just passed, but the Sunday before that. I left work 10 minutes early because I needed to catch my bus in order to get home. Otherwise, I was going to have to wait another hour to be picked up. And it's already a 45-minute bus ride to get me across town. And I just wanted to be home at that point. It had been a 12-hour shift. I was under a lot of mental strain because of an interaction between myself and my spouse that morning when I was being dropped off. So, got on the bus, went home. We had a text argument that very quickly escalated, and I ended up on the side of the road next to the parking, or not the parking, but the bus structure for an hour crying because of how stressed and upset I was. And by the time that I finally came back home, walked up the hill and went the rest of the way home, because it's also another half a mile walk uphill in the dark by myself, completely emotionally dragged through the mud. Get home, and then we continued to argue, but in person now. By the end of it, we were in a better place than when we started. We also talked a little bit the following morning. And then we had couples therapy on Friday. So we're going in a positive direction. But yeah, I got written up for being late. Or not late, excuse me. I got written up for leaving early. So, because it's a written, it's immediately a strike 2. If I make any more mistakes, I could get terminated. This is the only job I've had for about a year. And if I lost this job, and there was a possibility that we ended up getting evicted and not being able to get into another apartment because of the eviction, there's also the fact that I would have to once again start new employment and get additional paychecks to prove that I would be keeping the job and all of that. And I spent most of this past Sunday once again sitting in my seat crying uncontrollably, not really sure what to do going forward, what to do in the meantime, everything else. I thought that we would at least get 1 more month with these roommates before we would have to really worry about that. But like I said, they got approved to move into a unit, so that's what they're going to be doing now. And in the meantime, once again, state of the apartment and the fact that we don't have enough money to pay our bills and pay rent. And I don't know how we're going to get a roommate. So I'm just really stressed out about that. It's a lot. I feel really overwhelmed. I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing. I can't really say that keeping on and hoping for the best is really doing anything for me. I'm just really concerned about my safety at this point. So, yeah. I did have an interview on Monday. I really hope... No, excuse me. It was Tuesday. Once again, time is a flat circle. I did have an interview on Tuesday, and I felt like the interview went well. I really hope that I get the position. I'm willing to give them more emphasis in terms of where they need me on the weekly calendar. The way they have it set up is that the weekend would be alternating, so one weekend I would work Saturday and one weekend I would work Sunday. If I'm working at the first job, Sundays would be unavailable to me. I offered at the interview to work all Saturdays, but if that doesn't work, I will see about getting job 1 to be more flexible and maybe alternating me in the opposite direction so that they don't conflict. But if it doesn't work out and I end up having to leave the first job, at least this new one, in terms of hours, there won't be a negative loss. It's about the same amount of hours. And I would be making $2 more an hour, but that's still not very much more. I would still need to find an additional part-time job, and I've been really struggling to get even a in-person interview, let alone a call. I'm really, really hesitant to go through a staffing agency. I have a lot of feelings and opinions about staffing agencies. And a lot of the jobs that are available in my area are not jobs that I qualify for. It's a very high healthcare area, so a lot of jobs for nurses and that sort of thing. One of the hospitals I did work at as a post scheduler, like a post visit scheduler, for about 90 days after I finished training. Then they let me go for reasons. They claim it's because I was at the end of my probation and it wasn't working out. I disagree. There was a management change. There wasn't a whole lot of accountability. There were a lot of things that weren't trained very well because the managers that hired me, like within 2 weeks of me being fully on staff, both of the two managers quit because of, from what I was told, an overwhelming expectation that was placed on them that was really unrealistic. So, I mean, I absolutely understood why after having to work with their boss, basically, because she was working on doing all of the hiring, did a new set of managers in, and that wasn't going super well. So she was in and out of the area. She had to commute down and stay over the weeks that she was there. And because she's a higher up, she was also in a lot of meetings and a lot of other stuff in addition to doing the hiring herself, etc., etc. So it just was more of the same. And back when that was happening, I was also still the only one working because my spouse had broken their ankle. So they were laid up for almost a year just to be able to be functional again. And then I lost the job there. And then I was unemployed for a few months, and then I got the other job, and they told me they were going to give me more hours, and then that didn't happen. And then one of the people who was responsible for my lack of hours did eventually quit. And they didn't give me more hours. They kept me at the hours that I was originally at and hired 2 additional people to do that 1 day a week sort of situation. It's great, I guess, for them. Both of the people that were hired to do that, as far as I understand, this isn't their only job, and this is my only job. So I just felt like there was a lot of unfair treatment happening. Continues to happen. So it's just been a lot of me getting at the very end of my rope. And a lot of the depression symptoms are starting to shift from being just really sad and hopeless and anxious and all that to just being angry. I'm angry that all of this has happened and continues to happen. I'm angry because I can't rely on certain things to depend on certain things so that I know that we're going to be okay. There aren't really a lot of services that are available here because everything is being used. Everything is tapped out. There's waiting lists upon waiting lists for everything. And in the meantime, I'm told I just need to be hopeful and wait. So now it's just me being angry that it had to come to this. And that there's no way to fix it. That I haven't already done. And that I'm physically incapable of doing anything else. So my sleep hasn't been well, and my mood hasn't been well, and I've just become more upset. So that's what has been happening there. On top of that, there's been all the stuff that's been going on about the generative AI that is being integrated into Twitch and other platforms. So if you didn't already know, and you are a person who streams on this platform, please, please, please make sure that you take the opportunity to go into your settings and to toggle the switch that generative AI can train off of your videos. Now, that doesn't mean that Twitch still can't use your content for other projects to do, like, let's call them ads and trailers and shit like that. You already see them for, like, Meta, the company for, like, the head company for Facebook. Like, I'll see ads for Instagram and I'll see ads for Facebook in other apps that I use to try and get people to use those platforms, and they're using content from somewhere. It's not filmed content that is specifically for commercials that they are using to advertise for Meta. They're using content that other people post. And if you went into a platform and you signed the term, you agreed to the terms and conditions, most often than not, that is included in the small text somewhere. And that fucking sucks. Simply put, the fact that they are able to do it, the fact that we are living in that kind of timeline where that is even an option that they can do, all of that is incredibly disconcerting and uncomfy and really exploitative. And what is there to say that isn't already been said by people who can speak a lot more eloquently about it? And what's unfortunate is the fact that a lot of people have to use this platform anyway to make income. Like, this is a major source of income for a lot of people. Obviously not me. My audience isn't that big. I mean, I would love for it to be. It would be really wonderful if it were, but I'm not sitting here expecting it to be something it isn't without the hard work it's necessary to do that. So I have to just continue to keep on keeping on in that way and hoping for the best in that way. And in the meantime, I'm still looking for part-time work to try and make up for the fact that I'm not working 40 hours a week. I'm not getting paid enough money to pay for my home, my bills, my food, everything else. I'm sorry about the bird. It's daytime still. This is the risk that comes with being in a room that's next to a window. Even with the window closed, and that sucks too, because then there's this humidity of me talking and sweating where I'm at. So, hey Casey, how you doing? Please tell me you're not also having a shitty day, honey. I don't know if I can take another shitty thing happening today. Acne is continuing to be a problem. Shit is continuing to happen. The server that I was playing on, I don't know if I said it last week or not, but if I didn't, I'm gonna say it now. Leg.gg is closing, which they announced it will be officially down and over at the end of this month. There will, of course, be a world download and all that shit. Yeah, me too, honey. There will be a world download and all that other shit, which is great. But I was nowhere near finished. I was nowhere near finished doing my stuff. So I just left immediately as soon as I got the notification about it. And it's been really hard. It's been really hard to find any desire to do any of that since that happened. This was a game that I had been consistently playing for several years now. And now, congrats, honey. I'm really excited for you. I really hope everything works out in your favor and that your life is everything you hoped. I wish I could say the same for myself. So, I've been trying to find other things to occupy my mind. I'm not, but I'm trying to be. That's part of what makes it so hard. It's really hard to come on here and be like positive and hopeful and stuff and say things that people want to stick around for. But it's just really hard right now. And I know it's really hard for a lot of people that I usually sit in with and am hanging out with. They haven't been live for a couple weeks in some people's cases, couple months in others. And it kind of just reflects the overall mood I think everybody's having right now. It's just really hard to be chipper and inspiring and hopeful when there's just so much actual shit that's going on. So, as a way to try and help with my own malaise and hopelessness, I decided to lean really heavily into reading again. Something that I hadn't been doing for a little while. Mostly because I just didn't feel like I was in a place where I could reliably record and be live without noise happening. And being in a mental state where I could. I have a lot on my mind about my whole situation though. From just a few days ago, I have learned that the word grill means something entirely different in Scotland versus the United States. I lost the rest of that. And the concept of a grilled cheese is entirely different. And I'll learn this and only 21 days before my flight. Bro. Okay. Thank you for hanging around after through the ads for everybody who's still here. You didn't miss much. That completely derailed me. I don't even remember what I was talking about anymore. Reading. Yes, reading. That was something that I had talked about 2 streams ago, I want to say. Or maybe it was last week. I really don't remember anymore. I know we had a very long one that was just chatting for like 3 hours. I think maybe that was the last one I did. Because I haven't read since I started doing that. At least not on stream. I was trying to figure out what all to read on stream. I have a couple of things, obviously. I still have Charles Dillent stuff. I was reading Robin Hood, The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood to be more specific. I was, even further back than that, reading Norse mythology book. So those are all options, obviously. And they're a little bit more, like, dependable in that way. Like, they're not going anywhere. I decided to be a little risky and went back to NetGalley and Idlewise to see if I could get any advanced copies and read those. Going back to what Casey was saying, and on top of all that, I'm kind of worried that I'm just going to be like really quiet and awkward just because of social and cultural differences and loads of stuff I'm just not used to or never even heard of it. It might lead to problems. I think there's going to be some growing pains, and that's a pretty standard thing to happen whenever there's a big life change. I don't think anybody's going to be upset with you if you're a little quiet and observant and lean a little hard into things that are comfortable for you. And I know there are other people who have emigrated, expats, that sort of thing. Networks of people where you could probably talk to and get involved with, and you can still participate in the parts of your culture that you genuinely love and appreciate, even though you're not in that time, in that place, that sort of thing. I don't think you have much to worry about. I think you have a network of people who are still here to talk to and who will continue to help and support you as much as possible. So everything that's new is scary. Everything that's scary is scary. But as long as you have people who you can depend on at least to listen and to share the load, I think you'll be okay. That's what I have to tell myself every day if I'm going to keep going. also ARC copies. Advanced reader copies. That's what that means. So I'm kind of being redundant. ARC copies. ARC copies. Advanced reader copies. I shouldn't say ARC copies. I should just say advanced reader copies. ARCs. I looked into getting a few of them. And I was able to get approved for 4 of them now. I don't even have the full list. Give me a second and I will do that. There are 2 that I need to read sooner than the others because they will go into archive on the 25th and the 31st respectively. So I will probably be reading those for every stream until they are finished or until I get to a point where I feel comfortable being done reading them. And I will go and do reviews on a couple different platforms, Goodreads, Storygraph, Amazon if I can, places like my own Ko-fi page, so that it's in as many places as I can get it. I'll probably tweet about it on Blue Sky, or tweet about it. I will probably post about it on Blue Sky also, as a way to do my part. That's part of the whole point of doing this. I will also be reading them a little bit less traditionally. Like normally I would just read off the page and do my 30-minute or my 15-minute or 5-minute or 10-minute, whatever many minute breaks for voice break and for people to be able to, not have to listen to me yap the entire time without stopping. So the 2 books that are going to be archived soonest, I have them in my calendar. So give me 1 second to find them. Is a book called Fermentation, and the other one is Depression Cooking. Those are the 2 books. I feel like they're both pretty on the nose for what I've been doing lately. The first one is Fermentation, A Natural History, written by Sandor Ellix Kotz, who's a James Beard award winner and that sort of thing. And the other one is Depression Cooking by Sonali Menez, which is feeding yourself when it all feels too hard. Again, very topical. I believe Fermentation is, Fermentation is the one the last day is on the 24th, and Depression Cooking is the last day on the 31st. Those are the 2 deadline days. It is currently the 12th. So if I check, so I've got a week and a half, a week and a couple days. A week and a couple days to finish Fermentation, and then another week to finish Depression Cooking. Or the other way around. Either way. Gonna do that. Depression Cooking doesn't have a lot of illustrations. I don't think they have any illustrations. I already kind of scanned it to see. Depression Cooking does. So I'll probably post or have those on screen when they are relevant, and then just keep reading the rest of them. And I will be pausing to discuss things, share my thoughts on what has been said, and that sort of thing. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and get something up on the screen. On the screen. My mouth is so dry. I'm going to take a quick sip. Hope you do too. Excuse me. I made sure to not bring my noisy water bottle this time. I think I'm going to do the train again. I liked the train last time we used it. I mean, I could. No, I didn't. I have one that I could do, but I don't know how well it would present on the screen. am worried about that. So bear with me really quick while I get that open. I hope everybody else is having an okay day. I know Cozy mentioned being a little distressed because of some of the content that suddenly happened on the screen for the game that they're playing. Okay. Here we go. Do a quick adjust. There we go. Perfect. Also need to switch the topic on the Twitch side. So bear with me for just a second. So fermentation today. That's the one we're going to start with. As far as I can tell, it's going to be very, very interesting. I thought about putting on like something of a silly accent while I read it, but I don't know if I could maintain that. That's my biggest concern. Okay. Change that too. Anyway. I shouldn't put it in the cooking tab. Maybe I should. Game a bit loud. Okay, let me see if I can adjust that. I am talking quietly. I apologize. Try that. Is that any better? Hopefully it is. Oh, I didn't add it into my app list yet. In my media folder. There we go. Make sure that I have the correct title as well. A natural history. Okay. Natural history. Okay. We're going to change it to cooking, I think, because that's the most topical, I think. Of course, it's going to suggest things like Cooking Mama and Cooking Simulator and stuff like that. That doesn't quite work either. Food and drink. Let's do that. I'll get rid of some of these tags. Stream. Some of these tags are a little out of left field, so I probably won't use those. Fermentation. That'll be the last one. Okay, that one's good. Do we have any content classifications? Nah, none of that. Yeah, I'll go ahead and add a branded content warning. Might as well. Probably should have added a description to that, but that's fine. Whatever. Okay, that's been updated. Just a quick reminder that redeems are on. I know there aren't a lot of fun and fancy ones, but I am paying attention. I will do my best to react accordingly. I'm gonna do Pomodoro style reading for those who are unfamiliar with that. It is reading in sprints. So it'll be 15-minute sprints. Hi, Azzy, it's so nice to see you, honey. 15 minutes straight reading sprints. So 15 minutes of reading, 5 minutes of break. That'll take us to a full hour and change. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and set it up on this side and then we'll start. We're gonna do 15 minutes. We're gonna type we're reading. Forgive me for typing loud. Then I'm going to do a little quick disclaimer so that there's no confusion. Where is it? There we go. Sandor Ellix Kotz. Okay. Flipping over really quick to my pre-written disclaimer and a quick description of how we're going to be doing this. And I'll probably be doing this going forward for the next couple of books. I'm not being paid to promote or read these books on stream. All opinions will be my own and not shared by either the writer or the publishing companies. I will pause at times in order to share my opinions rather than to read them straight off the page without pausing. My reviews will be listed by the time both books have been read on various review platforms, and I strongly encourage you to also share your own individual reviews on the contents as well. We do love readers, writers, and publishing in my little corner of the internet. If you would like to support me, you can check out my affiliate links in the About tab on my Twitch. I also have a Ko-fi page, which is also listed in my About page. So feel free, if you want to help me and my content, to go ahead and do that. As far as when the ads come on the screen, please feel free to take a step aside, drink some water, do a stretch, get a snack, take your meds, pet your cat or dog or your bird, whatever the case may be. And during the 5-minute pauses, there will be quiet on my side, but I'm happy to interact with chat. I will occasionally turn my mic on if there's like a conversation that's happening, so that everybody feels included and part of the deal. Sound good? Alrighty. Let's begin. Fermentation and natural history. Like the changing seasons, the tides of the ocean, the migration of birds, evolution and extinction, and so many more natural phenomena, fermentation is a rhythm of the earth. This book is written by Sandor Ellix Kotz. Copyright 2026, all rights reserved. Hatchet Book Group supports the right to free expression and the value of copyright. The purpose of copyright is to encourage writers and artists to produce the creative works that enrich our culture. Scanning, uploading, and distribution of this book without permission is a theft of the author's intellectual property and would like permission to use material from the book other than for recording purposes. Please contact permissions at hbgusa.com. Thank you for your support of the author's rights. Timber Press, Workman Publishing, Hatchet Book Groups Incorporated, 1290 Avenue of the Americas, New York, 10104, timberpress.com. Timber Press is an imprint of the Workman Publishing division of Hatchet Book Group Incorporated. The Timber Press name and logo are registered trademarks of the Hatchet Book Group Incorporated. Printed in Yangzhou, China, TOF, and responsibly sourced paper. Text and cover design by Vincent James. Cover, interior, and end paper illustrations by Stacy Hsu. The publisher is not responsible for websites or their content that are not owned by the publisher. ISBN. And just the volume. Apologies. Does that change the volume at all? Or if not, I can adjust it here. Give me a moment. How is that? Is that better? Any better? I'm hoping it's better. Okay, good. ISBN 978-1-64326-551-3. A catalog record for this book is available from the Library of Congress. Dedication page. For my husband, Daniel Clark, aka Shopping Spree 3D, who teaches me so much about observing the natural world. Introduction. Like the changing seasons, the tides of the ocean, the migration of birds, evolution and extinction, and so many more natural phenomena, fermentation is a rhythm of the earth. Fermentation is an irrepressible life force, the transformative power of microorganisms, a manifestation of the fact of biodiversity, specifically the inevitable presence of vast communities of microorganisms in and upon all macroorganisms. While certain microorganisms can cause the dead tissue of their host to decompose in a most unappealing ways, many other microorganisms can elevate that same substrate, increase its utility in some way. Humans around the world have long worked with this invisible force, as have other life forms. For instance, leaf-cutter ants transport fragments of leaves down trees and through forests to their underground chambers. Though the ants cannot eat the leaves, they cultivate a fungus upon them, which the ants do eat. The relationship is obligate. The ants can't live without the fungus, and the fungus isn't found except where cultivated by the ants. Fermentation is and has been practiced in myriad ways in the vast majority of cultural traditions around the world. fermentation is part of the rhythm of substance. When the fruit is ripe, is the time to make wine or cider. The cabbage harvest is the time to make kraut or kimchi. Cheese making is driven first and foremost by the daily and seasonal rhythms of dairy animals, as well as the many faceted and ever-shifting rhythms of making and then aging the cheese. Bread making is all about rhythm, necessary for effective collaboration with yeast and bacteria. Between the garden, daily cooking, and my fermentation practice, my domestic life is quite heavily structured by rhythms like these. The steady gurgling sound of the bubbles releasing from the fermenting mead is reassuring. The sight of the dough rising tells me that it is almost ready to bake, and that the loaves will be pleasantly light and toothsome. The smell of the fermenting sauerkraut and kimchi make my mouth water with anticipation. My fingers gauge the temperature of the developing koji, a Japanese fungal fermentation starter, and when they feel that it has begun generating its own warmth, they break it up to release heat. Fermented foods can taste uniquely delicious, but the process of fermentation engages all the senses. Fermentation is no arbitrary twist of human culinary imagination and ingenuity, like, say, soufflés and donuts. It is practiced across human cultures, an essential part of how people in every part of the world make effective use of food resources. And so, it has been since long before the dawn of history. We now recognize the ubiquitous presence of microorganisms, but until recent times, they were invisible to us. Although we have long worked with these invisible forces and have increasingly come to recognize it, we cannot be said to have discovered it. This force and these organisms have been with us all along on our evolutionary journey. In fact, you could even say that fermentation created us. In these pages, we will delve into the important life force, defining the meaning of fermentation, surveying and roughly grouping manifestations of fermentation, exploring ways in which fermentation has been understood and conceptualized, introduce foundational fermentation concepts, and finally, addressing how fermentation figures into the evolution of life. I call myself a fermentation revivalist. Sorry, one second. Apparently I did not turn my do not disturb on. I call myself a fermentation revivalist because my personal obsession with fermentation and later my workshops and books has gradually led me to recognize how much curiosity exists about this phenomenon and what a hunger there is for more information about it. Although fermentation is ubiquitous around the world, almost everywhere many or most people have lost their connection to it, like every other aspect of food production. Magnifying this disconnection is the pervasive fear that is developed around bacteria and other microorganisms, which makes it easy to imagine that fermentation is dangerous, which it is not. Like growing food or saving seeds, fermentation techniques are essential cultural information that must be valued, safeguarded, and most importantly, used. I became fully obsessed more than 30 years ago when I moved from my native New York City to a commune in rural Tennessee. I was gardening and learning other skills of substance, and fermentation seemed inevitable as part of it, what with fleeting periods of vegetable and fruit overabundance and the milk from our community's herd of goats. But the seeds of my interests were planted long before. I have loved to eat pickles for as long as I can remember. Just thinking about them as I write this activates my salivary glands as I imagine the intense sour saltiness and satisfying crisp texture. Where I grew up in New York City, pickles were a prominent part of the culinary landscape, and we always had a jar in our refrigerator. Even though I wasn't thinking about fermentation or how the pickles were made, I was very strongly drawn, always, to certain flavors of fermentation. What first got me thinking about fermentation was experimenting with diet, specifically the influences of the macrobiotic food movement that originated in Japan, which emphasizes the digestive benefit of eating pickles and other live cultured foods. I began seeking out ferments and eating them regularly for good health. Still, I was living in New York and buying my ferments. Only when I started gardening in Tennessee did I recognize the practical aspect of fermentation as a strategy for preservation. I started fermenting the first year I started gardening, and 30-some years later, I haven't stopped practicing either. My work as a fermentation educator has brought me to dozens of countries around the world. I've had the great pleasure of sampling a vast array of different traditional fermentations, as well as many others that are boldly experimental, meeting the people who fermented them and learning about their processes. The possibilities of fermentation are quite nearly infinite. What is fermentation? The answer depends on who you ask. In the food and beverage context, fermentation generally refers to transformations resulting from the metabolic activities of microorganisms. The word derives from the Latin fervere, which means to boil. Many common fermentation processes, such as those that produce alcohol in bread, produce bubbles, just as boiling liquids do. In fact, fermentation has long been recognized and characterized by the presence of bubbles. Biologists generally understand fermentation as cellular anaerobic metabolism, the production of energy without oxygen. Anaerobic metabolism is not limited to microorganisms. In fact, the cells of our bodies are capable of fermentation. Our bodily cells generally function using respiration, but if cells need to produce more energy than the supply of oxygen allows, they can switch to a less efficient fermentative mode of metabolism. Most of the foods and beverages that we describe as fermented meet biologists' definition of fermentation and do not require oxygen. For example, the fermentation of grapes into wine, wheat into bread, cabbage into sauerkraut, and milk into yogurt are all anaerobic processes. These fermentation organisms do not require the total absence of oxygen, as do obligate anaerobes, such as the notorious Clostridium botulinum. They simply do not need oxygen. However, a large handful of microbial transformations used in foods and beverages do involve organisms that require oxygen, among them vinegar, kombucha, and molds such as those used in tempeh, koji, and some cheeses and cured meats. These aerobic processes are universally understood to be fermentations, even though they contradict the biologist's definition. I generally work with a broad lay definition of fermentation as the transformative action of microorganisms. Yet not every transformative action of microorganisms results in something that we are prepared to eat. In fact, the transformative action of microorganisms is one of the major reasons why we discard food when we clean our refrigerators and pantries. We do not regard the decomposing onion, potato, or parsley as fit for consumption, and the transformation has not rendered it more desirable. Because of the diversity of organisms in our environments and on our foods, a variety of potential microbial transformations are possible, and some of them are not so pretty. In the realms of foods and beverages, we usually reserve the word fermentation to describe intentional or desirable transformations. Not everyone necessarily agrees on what is or isn't desirable, however. To some degree, this can be due to cultural socialization, and to some degree, it can be highly personal. Some people are very, very picky about the foods they are willing to eat. Others, including myself, are food adventurers excited to expand the boundaries of flavors and sensory experience, and fermented foods and beverages vastly expand the realm of possibilities. Certain products of fermentation can be quite polarizing, inspiring desire in some and horrifying disgust in others. Among them, strong cheeses, natto, stinky tofu, surströmming, which is a Swedish fermented herring, and quite a few other foods. In the context of the biodiversity that is present in and on all products of nature and agriculture, the practice of fermentation is all about manipulating environmental conditions, such as access to or protection from air or water, specifically temperature or humidity ranges, and salting. These simple actions have the effect of encouraging the growth of certain organisms while simultaneously discouraging others. Some organisms can decompose or spoil food, others can potentially make people sick. Our clever ancestors observed that under certain conditions, rather than decomposing, our food could stay safe and become alcoholic, could be preserved for long periods, could taste especially delicious, could be more easily digestible, and/or could become less toxic. Cultural traditions everywhere develop techniques that accomplish these objectives. Fermentation is an investment in the future, and there is always practical benefit from it. No definitive list exists regarding which foods are fermented and which are not, and the inclusion of certain foods can be debatable. Microorganisms, like other cells, metabolize available nutrients via the enzymes they produce, and in some fermentations, mostly those involving koji and related molds, the mold is no longer growing or even alive during the fermentation process, but the enzymes it has produced are still active. For example, in short term, typically warm as high as 140 Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius, fermentation of Japanese amazake, amylase enzymes in the koji, rapidly break down complex carbohydrates into simple sugars and transform rice into a sweet porridge or beverage. At such high temperatures, the fungus that produces the koji cannot survive, yet amazake is fermented since it requires the enzymes that remain in the koji, even though the fungus is no longer alive. Some other food processes rely upon enzymes that are produced by cells within the foods themselves rather than added. For example, the process used to create black garlic and similar products requires the same temperature range used for amazake, but what sweetens and darkens the garlic are enzymes within, as well as the chemical reaction called the Maillard reaction between sugars and amino acids. Is black garlic fermented? I think not, because it seems that microbes play no role, but the question seems open to interpretation. What about foods that are preserved by salting and drying, and any fermentation is incidental, such as cured hams? The precise limits of fermentation are not particularly well defined, but then why should they be? The whole phenomenon is due to the biological reality that edges are complex and textured, membranes are porous, and boundaries are fuzzy. None of the people who figured out fermentation processes could think about them in terms of microorganisms. For them, the conditions they created led consistently to desired outcomes, based on results that people could observe. They learned by observation and trial and error, how to judge the best proportions, how to feel the ideal temperature, how to smell or taste when the ferment was at its peak. The lessons passed from generation to generation, refined over time, and spread through interaction and migration. Fermentation is a biological phenomenon, yet the diverse ways in which it is applied are distinctly cultural. I didn't even realize that we were done. So now we are going to take a 5-minute break. In which case, I need to copy the text so I don't have to keep typing it each time. Okay. Do you forgive the bird outside my window? It was really getting too warm in here to not have the window open. And this particular bird comes by at the end of the day every single frickin' day, I swear. Alright, sigh. Is my voice coming through okay in terms of the sounds that are on the screen? Or do I need to adjust things? Let me know. The thing that stinks about that bird is it sounds like it's literally outside my window. Oh yeah, it absolutely is. I can see it on the branch. It shouldn't, because I think the sound stays the way it is when I'm on the screen. As far as I can tell. What are we thinking so far about the book? I'm already thinking a little bit about, that's a hell of a bird, you're right. I'm already having a lot of thoughts, specifically about some of the ferments that I have eaten or made over the course of my life. Specifically with, like, vegetable pickles. Vegetable pickles, the ones that are actual lacto ferments versus vinegar pickles, there is a big difference too with that, because then are you working with sterilized vinegar, like white distilled vinegar, or are you using like a wild vinegar, like apple cider vinegar that has the mother still in it? In a way, that's still a fermentation that's done lactic acid style. So you get into those little extra dynamic-y things. I know with like distilled white vinegar, it is like universally always going to taste the same, no matter what you do. I don't think black garlic is fermented from culinary perspective. It's just cooked slowly to caramelize the sugars. Well, the thing is that it's not technically cooked. At least according to the information that the author has just provided. Sai says, well, fermented food is okay, but kind of getting the vibe of encouragement of trying to experiment with rotten and spoiled food. I mean, I'm sure she'll explain more as the book goes on, what all that means. Because it's not, you're not eating rotten or spoiled foods. It is definitely one of those things where those specific microorganisms need to be present in order for them to ferment, and it needs to be in the right environment, and they need to have the right kind of food. For instance, when you're working with sourdough bread, for instance, the wild yeast that's on the kernel of the grain is the thing that ends up making the sourdough. As he says, I think that's how ferment started. To be fair, this food's been sitting out a bit, smells a bit funky, but hey, it tastes good. At least in my experience, you can tell the difference between something that is fermented or rotten. Like, your nose is a humongously fantastic tool with that, and we use it as often as grabbing the milk out of the fridge and then checking to see if it still smells okay. And if it passes the sniff test, is it going to pass the taste test? And there's definitely a difference between buttermilk, which is a milk that has been intentionally fermented. You are completely right, Cassie. Buttermilk or yogurt, which are very intentionally fermented, versus sour milk or spoiled milk, which doesn't smell good, which doesn't taste good. It doesn't have the appropriate bacteria inside to create what needs to happen next. As I was saying, like with sourdough bread, sourdough starter, the yeast is on the flour itself. And when you're making a starter for the first time, you're using only the bread flour and water. and you continuously feed it over time more flour, more water in a anaerobic or even sometimes aerobic, when you start specifically with sourdough starter, when you're making sourdough starter from scratch, it's supposed to be exposed to air. So over the course of time, it starts to bubble, it starts to smell yeasty, the way that a beer might smell yeasty. It has a pleasant smell, a pleasant scent. And that's when you start to feed it more regularly, or you can put it aside in a colder place like a fridge or in a cold cellar to slow down the fermentation product. Doesn't that implement unknown variables by contamination? I would say probably likely in the beginning. I can say from personal experience that if the environment isn't what is ideal, it will start to show actual like green mold, or even in some cases black mold. Obviously you want to throw those out, but you can tell if you put your nose in something like that, it will smell like decomposition, it will smell like rot, and our bodies don't want to eat those things because of what it can do to us. Certainly can do until you refine the process and work out the best places to keep things, best temperatures, etc. Exactly, Azzy. And it is definitely one of those things where a lot of it you could guess was unintentional. And it was something that they observed, and then they started to test it scientifically, you may say, to see what produced that same product and what didn't. I know, for instance, when you're making wine, it's one of those things, once again, where you have to have it ferment at a specific temperature. The yeast is usually on the skin of the fruit. With grapes especially, having those natural sugars exposed to the yeast, which feeds on those sugars, is what creates the alcoholic effect. And the longer it eats those sugars and produces the burped out booch, as they sometimes call it in the business, it starts to change away from wine into vinegar. It's still a fermented product, but it becomes a different product by having less of the sugar available and more of the alcohol available, and that alcohol slowly evaporating until you've just got the sour liquid left. A lot of these things were discovered over time, over generations, and then those observations being recorded and kept and built on and refined and all of those things. Like, I'm sure it'll go into further explanation in the book, because this is a history of fermentation after all. But like, I have direct experience with sourdough because I've done sourdough from scratch, and I've done sourdough from someone else's starter being passed on to me. And even in the case of a sourdough starter, the yeast that's in the air can affect how the sourdough starter starts to taste and change over time. When you bring a specific sourdough into a specific environment, the yeasts in that area will ultimately be the ones that are predominantly in that bread. That's why when you get Santa Fe sourdough bread, it'll taste different than something like a rye flour sourdough bread, which has very distinct flavors of the grain that is part of that fermentation. All of these different things. I had a sourdough starter that went off. It started developing green mold in it, and it's because I left it open air for a couple days before I closed the lid on it. And because of the temperature fluxing and because of the exposure to air and the fact that it didn't have the right kind of food left in the sponge itself, that's why it ended up spoiling instead. Something icky came into contact with the rest of the yeasts and it won the fight, you could say. A second example is something like a calm yeast, K-A-H-N or M, K-A-H-M, like Mary, calm yeast, which is a very white, like almost filmy kind of yeast. A lot of people worry, oh, that shows that the sourdough starter has gone bad. But the thing is that you can tell again, based on smell, that it's okay. It's just a different kind of yeast that's been introduced. It's not necessarily a toxic one, though it does sometimes worry people, because it does show that a different type of yeast is starting to go at war with the rest of the culture that's already existing in the sourdough sponge. In situations like that, it's really important to make sure that you're keeping a regular feeding schedule, you're adding the appropriate amounts of water and flour, you're keeping the temperatures at the right ambient temperature, that it's supportive and conducive to the building of that bacteria again. And you'll notice that it's a very visible fermentation process. I've also most recently I made a ginger bug, which is using just plain ginger that you would get at the grocery store, water, and sugar. It's recommended in situations like that you use distilled water, which is like the cleanest water because all of the impurities have been removed from it for the best results. But I only use tap water because that's what I have easy access to. It's literally ginger that's cut up and chopped, water that you can get from your tap, and plain granulated white sugar. You feed it, you continue to add the ginger, you continue to add the sugar, the water you adjust as things go. In that situation, you want to make it anaerobic, you do put a lid on it and close it. Good grief! Oh, birds, I'm trying to do a stream here. Can you chill, please? Oh, God. Anyway, you use ginger bug to make wild sodas, prebiotic sodas, a fermented soda, basically, and you use sugar, sucrose, to make it. That's what the yeast in the ginger bug, which comes from the fruiting body of the ginger itself, the rhizome, not the fruiting body, I'm using the wrong word. The rhizome itself has the yeasts in it. You don't have to do anything to add to it. It's already in there. As soon as it gets exposed to the sugar, that's when the product starts to produce gas, produce bubbles. And the more sugar you feed it, the more frequently you feed it, the more you increase the number of yeast culture, to the point where I can add a single tablespoon of sugar into the bug and it will immediately get super active and super bubbly, to the point where I've had to actively put a lid back on it and screw it on, otherwise it would bubble over the sides of the jar. So I have to be really careful. I may bring down both of my ferments at some point while we're reading this book to show you what my two ferments look like. I've had other ferments in the past, but these are the two that I'm currently keeping active in my house. But I've also done kombucha. I want to do a June at some point. I've been talking about doing oxymels with my spouse. We just needed to get a good local honey for that if we're going to do that. And you need to use raw honey in cases like doing a mead or an oxymel. Otherwise, it doesn't have the yeast cultures that you need in order for it to build into that product. I hope that makes sense. And I'd love to talk about that more and show more and encourage more. Let's get back to it, shall we? I keep trying to use my wireless mouse that I can't use because it doesn't have the dongle plugged in, so I have to use my hand on the touchpad in order to make it work. All right. Hopefully the volume hasn't changed again. I'm going to adjust the lighting just a tiny bit. There we go. Damn bird. Cultural manifestations. Fermentation is practiced by people in every part of the world. It is so common that almost every person in almost every part of the world regularly eats and or drinks products of fermentation and has done so for countless of generations. Fermented foods and beverages include staples such as bread and cheese, beloved luxuries such as coffee, chocolate, and vanilla, pickles, olives, sauerkraut, kimchi, and seasonings including soy sauce and pastes, and diverse fermented beans, as well as fish sauces and all manners of vinegar-based condiments, all alcoholic beverages, cured fish and meats, and so much more. The transformative action of microorganisms also underlies composting and related strategies for building and maintaining soil fertility, and is also used to render seeds viable, as well as to produce fuel, fibers, building materials, dyes, and pharmaceuticals to treat sewage, and surely more. We can best understand why the phenomenon of fermentation is so widespread by considering its inevitability thanks to biodiversity. All the plants and all the animal products that make up our food are populated by elaborate communities of microorganisms. Just as we have learned that each human body is host to a mind-bogglingly populous and diverse web of microorganisms that contribute in critical ways to our functionality, so too is each grapevine, each stalk of wheat or corn, each head of cabbage, and each cow and goat. Once upon a time, each individual organism was imagined to be a singular entity. Slowly, we are recognizing that no organism is an island. Fermentation is an outcome of this biological reality. Microorganisms are everywhere and never singular. They exist in great complexity and diversity in every environment and on all the plants and animal products that we eat. Microbiology emerged as distinct science after French chemist Louis Pasteur's technological achievements of isolating singular microorganisms and propagating them. But until this 19th century event, fermentation always involved communities of organisms. These communities are typically present on the food being fermented, especially when it is raw, and others can be added to the form of mostly botanical elements, a dedicated vessel or tool, or even our hands. Today, a wide variety of pure cultures starters are available, singular organisms that are isolated and propagated in laboratories, such as the yeast cells is illustrated in this book. These starters are very convenient and reliable, and they change the process of fermentation in a critical regard. I probably missaid it, I'm sorry. All traditional fermented foods are more biodiverse because of the communities of organisms that are present. The ferments we associate with yeast, from wine to bread, have involved diverse wild yeasts and also lactic acid bacteria, among others. So in addition to alcohol and carbon dioxide, the products of yeast, they have contained lactic acid and other flavorful fermentation byproducts. Similarly, fermented vegetables, though dominated by lactic acid bacteria, generally have traces of alcohol. Cheeses made from raw milk are microbial cornucopias. Many people continue ancient traditions of fermenting with the inherent biodiversity of spontaneous wild fermentation, and many others are discovering it. But until 150 years ago, all fermentation was done in this way. Since that time, the science of microbiology has illuminated the life processes underlying fermentation in ever greater detail. Yet, all the aforementioned examples of fermentation predate scientific understanding of the phenomenon, and they have been made since ancient times. How people figured out how to make them and how long ago, we can only speculate, because they predate recorded history. Some cultures have creation myths involving beloved fermented foods or beverages, and ferments are well represented in oral storytelling traditions and the rituals of indigenous cultures. Ferments feature prominently in some of the oldest existing written texts. The earliest archaeological evidence of fermentation dates around 9,000 years ago in pottery sherds with residue of alcohol found at a site in China. Intentional fermentation is probably much older than that, however, because presumably the earliest fermentation vessels were natural objects such as gourds, animal membranes, and hollowed out tree trunks, which are fully biodegradable and would leave no residue thousands of years later. Pottery sherds are the oldest archaeological remains containing alcohol residue. Fermentation processes can be categorized in many ways. For instance, they can be organized geographically, with every inhabited region well represented with distinct processes, yet with much repetition. Fermentations can be sorted by the types of organisms that dominate the processes, with the most frequent ones being yeasts, bacteria, including lactic acid bacteria, Asobacter, bacillus, and others, and a few different filamentous fungi, such as molds. The limitation of these categorizations is that so many processes involve multiple types of organisms, biodiversity being the constant. Fermentations can also be organized by major fermentation byproducts, such as ethanol, lactic acid, acetic acid, and others, though here again, many produce a complex accumulation of byproducts, resulting in rich and layered flavors. Ferments can also be categorized by substrate, the types of food upon which the organisms are growing. Of course, substrates are frequently combined, but typically there is a dominant type of ingredient. Here I offer a hybrid categorization, starting with alcoholic and other related beverages, with subsequent groupings organized by substrate. Alcohol. Alcoholic beverages are by far the most widespread products of fermentation. Ethanol is the chemical name of the alcohol we drink. Other alcohols, such as methanol, are extremely toxic if ingested. Ethanol can be fermented from just about any carbohydrate source you can find by fungi called yeasts, which are generally present on carbohydrate-rich raw foods. Alcohol is most straightforward to make from simple sugars, such as those found in ripe fruits, certain plant saps, and any form of sugar or honey, all of which will ferment quite spontaneously into ethanol. The best known examples of this type of ferment are wines fermented from pressed grapes, cider from apples, and meads from diluted honey and herbs. All of these are widely produced today, with ancient traditions persisting in many different parts of the world. Most tropical regions feature palm wines made from the sap of palm trees. The sap of maguey, also known as agave, is fermented into pulque in Mexico. Grated pineapples are fermented into guarapo de piña in the Amazon. The juice that drips from cacao pulp is collected everywhere that cacao is grown and processed, where it is enjoyed fresh as well as fermented. Many fruits have specific local traditions of fermentation into alcohol, and many edible fruit can be fermented as a country wine by infusing it into a sugar water solution. Saps of sugar cane, corn stalks, and the gum eucalyptus trees in Tasmania are among many others that are fermented. Even milk with its lactose is fermented into alcoholic komis in Central Asia. Sometimes fruits or seasonings such as garlic, ginger, or turmeric are fermented with extremely high proportions of sugar or honey. The sugar draws water from the fruit or other botanicals, and fermentation proceeds very slowly because of the high sugar content, yielding a sweet, very lightly fermented syrup, such as Korean cheong. Grains and starchy tubers rich in complex carbohydrates can be fermented into alcohol only with some prior transformation by amylase enzymes to break down the carbohydrates into simple sugars. This saccharification can be accomplished by any of the processes discussed next. Malting. Malting is typically used in beer making. and in the production of many other grain-based alcoholic beverages, such as African sorghum and millet beers, Peruvian chicadillora, Mexican tezguino, and many others. Malted grain is germinated or sprouted, and this sets in motion enzymes that saccharify, that is spelled Sacchharify, saccharify, carbohydrates to feed the emerging seedling. In malting, the sprouting seed is used or dried before the seedling can develop, preserving the available sugars and the amylase enzymes for the beer. Molds. Across Asia, grain-based fermented beverages rely upon molds for saccharification, including Aspergillus oryzae, and others with similar enzymes. These are known as koji in Japan, jiuke in China, and nuruk in Korea. Although the use of molds for this purpose is present in the Western Hemisphere, it is less widely spread and well known. In Costa Rica, the Brie family showed me how they grow a fungus on cakes of corn used to make chicha. A Brazilian anthropologist has documented widespread use of molds in fermented cassava beverages in the Amazon. Saliva. Saliva is another source of amylase enzymes. Around the world, many traditions exist and have existed in which cooked grain and starchy tubers are chewed and then spit out, saturated with saliva, to be brewed into beverages that undergo fermentation. These saccharification processes and the fermentations that follow them produce a vast range of alcoholic beverages from grains and starchy tubers, many of them extremely localized. Vinegars. Vinegar is produced when alcohol is metabolized into acetic acid by Acetobacter bacteria, generally present along with yeast. These bacteria can function only in the presence of oxygen, which is why most contemporary alcohol fermentations attempt to exclude oxygen once the initial, most vigorous period of bubbly fermentation subsides, leaving the beverage more susceptible. Sometimes people Sometimes people set out to make vinegar, intentionally exposing a broad surface to air, or even pumping air in. Other times, vinegar is a consolation prize for an intended alcohol fermentation gone awry. Everywhere alcohol is produced, vinegar sometimes occurs, and its use is extremely widespread. Distillation. Distillation can only concentrate alcohol. The alcohol is created exclusively by fermentation. Ethanol vaporizes at a lower temperature than water. In distillation, the fermented beverage is heated, and the ethanol in it vaporizes before the water reaches its boiling temperature. The vapor hits a water-cooled surface, which causes them to condense back into liquid form, enabling the ethanol to be separated from the water and thereby concentrated. The very first vapors to condense generally include highly toxic methanol, hence distillers typically discard the heads. The main practical advantage of distillation is that a higher alcohol concentration makes the beverage much more stable. Fermented alcohol is frequently unstable because of the Acetobacter and other bacteria. These are killed by the heat involved in the process of distillation, and the distilled spirits are protected by their evaporated alcohol. These are killed by the heat involved in the process of distillation, and the distilled spirits are protected by their elevated alcohol content. Go. As he says, I wonder if that's similar mechanism to run it. I wouldn't be too surprised. I know, because it's obviously cheese, you know, and how that was even figured out in the first place. Like, I would have to really look into that because I'm curious. I know that there are such things as vegetable rennets also. It's really about the chemical composition that is able to produce that sort of reaction in milk. I just saw something that mentioned using saliva as a way to make prison hooch, which of course it does. Why am I even remotely surprised? I wish I could remember the name of the product that we tried, because we did like a flight of meads at a specific place that sold it when we were living in Southwest Arizona. Oh, that's gonna bug me. I don't even remember the name of the establishment. I'm gonna have to ask maybe if my spouse remembers. Saliva is alkaline, a pH of 8.2, while milk is almost neutral with a pH of 6.7. Interesting. It seems like the most frequently discussed, yeah. I remember that was a whole viral thing that happened. This is probably going to give some people the ick, and I apologize in advance, but it is food related. She had a very specific strain of yeast in a very specific part of her body that she then used. I'm not sure how she collected it, and I don't really want to go and look, but she did introduce that yeast to flour and ended up making a, 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 Yeah, one of them long spoons is right. And I really wonder. I know that, like, because she mentioned, the author mentioned that coffee is a fermented product, which it is. Same thing with cacao. Turning it into chocolate, you have to ferment it. Oh my God, Azzy. You have to ferment both coffee and cacao in order to make the products that we use to drink coffee and to eat chocolate, or in some cases drink chocolate. And I've watched like how it's made, videos on that. I might have to go and find them and look at them a little bit more closely now. And I know with something like coffee, more specifically, even after it's done doing its fermentation process, even after it's done with the fermentation process, you still wouldn't consume the green coffee beans or the unroasted beans. They aren't they, Azzy? I really enjoy watching them. They feel so educational, like we're learning something that's a secret, you know? I always found them really interesting because of that. And I know there's another series specifically on YouTube, which is like, why is it so expensive? That kind of delves into the same vein of learning how something is made and why it's so expensive. Usually it has a lot more to do with how niche it is, or how a very small percentage of people actually know the full process. Thank you, bot. Everybody have a good little stretch. I'm not going to stand, but I am going to stretch like this. Did somebody just give me? No, it was Alan. Sorry, I kind of broke it. Do a little stretch. Have some water. I'm going to do across the neck this way too. One of my favorites is how toilet rolls are made, because it's a big, long roll, and they cut it into short sections by a very comically looking cartoons style spinner. I missed half of that. Spinning blade. It's like something from Roadrunner. Yeah. Did you know, Azzy, that the paper used for making paper towel rolls or toilet rolls, and the paper that's used in the now considered old-fashioned paper egg cartons, egg cartons, not milk cartons. They're a great substrate for when you're starting off, like planting seeds and propagating plants, because it's one of those products that's very compostable. Like, it's very untreated paper, which makes it a really great use for that. When I learned that, oh my God, the amount of paper towel rolls and toilet rolls that I've kept just to have them ready for when I'm able to finally start doing plant growing and plant raising, so I can do some of that stuff in my house, especially during the winter. Get those plants started. Exactly. It's basically raw paper pulp. And I would get like the big flats of eggs that are like 30 plus eggs or more, just for that reason, so that I have these basically huge sheets of untreated paper in cup shapes that I could then put seeds in and do the full planting that way. I have like a couple boxes in my house. It's one of those weird things that I keep for a project that I'm planning to use it for. And so help me, I am going to do it this year. I'm not going to put it off anymore. I give my spouse so much crap for keeping little things all over the place, but in some ways, I'm no better. Oh. My do not disturb got turned off, so I gotta turn that back on again. 1 more hour. Oh, and my bedtime alarm was gonna go off too if I didn't turn that off. Oh goodness. So this is going to be our third stint. What did you miss? Hang on. I don't know when you stepped out. I have no idea. Clicky away. Come back. Oh my god, it doesn't want to refresh. Hang on. Oh, as you fill it in. How paper is made is a whole thing. The pulp goes around a lazy river and then has the crap smashed out of it by spinning rollers. Yep. I just watched a video very specifically about grain like 9 minutes ago. Okay. It came up on my suggested feed, specifically talking about different types of grain and how they evolved in the different climates that they became best known for, well used. And it talked about like buckwheat, for example. Buckwheat is one of the most hardy winter grains, or it's a seed. And it has to literally have the crap bashed out of it in order for it to even be made into an edible food product. And you're right, it is. Buckwheat is very nice. I enjoy a couple different types of buckwheat products personally. And the same can be said about oats. Oats are another one that have to be literally just beat to hell in order to get to the product that's actually nutritious. You wouldn't be able to eat oat straight off of the stalk. You have to treat it. And yeah, I agree. Buckwheat porridge is very nice. You see it often in East Asian countries using buckwheat because I think it's one of those companion plants that goes alongside rice. I might be wrong on that. But I also know that it is one of those foods that is very temperature sensitive. So like it grew in very specific climates that would have encouraged that kind of growth. Ads. Silly ad break. Oh my goodness. If you want to avoid the ads, you can always subscribe, but don't feel like you have to. I'm not gonna twist anybody's arm to make them subscribe. But I will yap for a couple seconds because it is a 90-second ad break and I don't want anybody to miss anything interesting. But as a reminder, of course, if you want to support me and not just do something like subscribe or use bits, you can, of course, check out the affiliate links in the About tab below and purchase any of the books that I read through them. Or you can help me on my Ko-fi page. All of those are options. And I will, of course, be endlessly grateful and make sure to thank you should you decide to do that. But don't feel like you have to. And you'll, of course, if you could share my video and subscribe on YouTube and that sort of thing. Thank you for coming and sticking around after ad break. Alrighty. Let's get back to it. I think this is our third 15. I think it is. So we'll do, this is a third, we'll do one more, so there's going to be 1 5-minute break between the two, and then after that we will raid out. Sound good? Okie dokie. Birds making bird noises outside of my window. Also there's a train, an actual train. Thank you, I'll be here all week. Oh dear, hang on. There we go. I'm gonna switch the light a little. Oh look, there's some sheeps. go. There we go. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Lightly fermented beverages. Lightly fermented beverages, soft drinks with negligible alcohol content, are also fermented from both simple sugars and grains. The most famous example is kombucha, which is fermented from sweetened tea by means of a mother, a rubbery disc embodying a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, also known as a SCOBY, S-C-O-B-Y, which collectively reproduces and generates new layers of the mother. Other lightly fermented beverages from simple sugars include Mexican tepache, an infusion of the skins of pineapple in sugar water, and tibicos, also known as water kefir, another SCOBY which forms into small crystalline structures, Caribbean muabi or mavi, and traditional ginger and root beers. Grain-based lightly fermented beverages can be sour or sweet, including Russian kvass from dry rye bread, many corn-based beverages throughout the Americas and southern Africa, and many rice and millet-based beverages across Asia. I agree, kvass is very nice. Grains. Bread is the most iconic result of the fermentation of grains. We live really close to a hospital. That was probably a helicopter. Let me start that whole thing again. Grains. Bread is the most iconic result of the fermentation of grains. It is a staple food for many and is used to signify foundational concepts such as sustenance, civilization, and money. Most bread today is fermented by a pure culture of the yeast. I'm going to mess this one up. Saccharomyces cerevisiae. We'll look that up later. Until the 20th century, availability of pure culture yeast, all breads relied upon natural leavening involving the biodiverse community of organisms found on grains, including S. cerevisiae, along with other yeasts and lactic acids and other bacteria. A sourdough starter is generally just flour and water mixed together and fermented, and then diluted with more water and fed more flour repeatedly so as to build leavening power, which can be perpetuated over time with continued care and feeding. Grains are fermented in many ways beyond bread. Mature grains, dry on the stalk, are processed and kept dry to be stored for long periods. Grains are populated by diverse microbes as much as any other plant material. However, when the grain is dry, these organisms are dormant. Only when water is added can they come to life. So the first step of most grain ferments is to add water. Grains are often fermented simply by soaking them, no matter whether they are whole, cracked, or ground into flour. In many parts of the world, grains are, or were, routinely fermented before cooking them into porridges. For infants, this can lead to improved survival rates, as the acidification of fermentation protects against pathogenic bacteria that can cause diarrhea, and the grain's nutrients become more bioavailable as a result of bacterial predigestion. Many pancakes and flatbreads of the world are fermented prior to cooking. Often raw grains, sometimes along with beans, are soaked and then ground into batter to ferment, as in dosa, South Indian crepes from a fermented batter of rice and lentils, and Sri Lankan hoppers from a fermented batter of rice and coconut sap. Other times, dry milled flours are mixed into batters or doughs to ferment, as in injera, Ethiopian sponge bread from a fermented batter of teff, spelled T-E-F-F. Sourdough starter, and especially the soured portion that is generally removed when the starter is fed, has many diverse applications. Among them pancakes and crackers, as a starter for sour beverages such as Russian kvass, as a base for soups such as Polish żurek, and diluted and salted as brine for pickling, as in Cypriot mongura. Koji and similar molds are frequently grown on grains and on soybeans, and increasingly, in recent explosions of global interest and experimentations, on everything and anything. Across Asia, one of the ways these molds are used is to make rice and other grains sweet, such as Chinese junyang, Japanese amazake, and Indonesian tape, also made with cassava. These sweet ferments are generally eaten quickly, cooked, or frozen after the enzymatic transformation, before they have time to undergo alcoholic or acidic fermentation. Starchy tubers are fermented in many ways similar to grains. Fermentation breaks down toxic compounds such as cyanogenic glycosides in cassava and calcium oxalate in taro, TARO. Cassava tubers are fermented and turned into a vast range of products. In the West African staple fufu, fermented cassava starch is cooked into a thick, sticky mass. In an Amazonian tucupi, the toxic juice is pressed from cassava and fermented. Then it's cooked with other ingredients into a thick and flavorful condiment paste. On islands in the South Pacific, taro is cooked and mashed, and the paste is fermented into poi. In the Andes Mountains of Peru, the bitterness and toxicity of high-altitude potatoes are broken down, and the potatoes are preserved by exposure to fluctuating daily temperatures, alternating daytime fermentation with nighttime freeze-drying into chuño, moraria, and other styles. Beans and other seeds. Beans can be fermented spontaneously, just like grains. Black-eyed peas are soaked and ground into a batter in West Africa, African acara and Afro-Brazilian acaralhe. Beans are fermented with grains to make pancakes such as lentils fermented with rice into dosa. Many of the soybean ferments involved aspergillus and related molds, like those used to break down the complex carbohydrates in rice. In addition to saccharifying amylase enzymes, these molds produce protease enzymes that break down proteins into amino acids, resulting in the appealing, savory flavor now known as umami. They also produce lipase enzymes that break down fats into delicious fatty acids, further enhancing flavor. These molds are used to ferment rich umami seasonings such as Chinese daochi, which is fermented black beans, soy sauces and pastes, and other fermented jiangs, as fermented seasonings are called in Chinese, or jiangs, as they are called in Korean. Other molds are used in the fermentation of tempeh in Indonesia, Rhizopus species, and tofu in China, Asinomurica species. Often two or more of these three mold genera, Aspergillus, Rhizopus, and Acetamuricor, have been found to be intermixed in samples of traditional fermentations. Oh, Latin. The fermentation of tofu is extremely varied. Molded tofu is just the first step in many styles of furu, which is pickled tofu. Generally, molded tofu is mixed with salt, spices, sometimes koji, sometimes alcohol, and sometimes oil for subsequent fermentation. Cho tofu, known in English as stinky tofu, takes a completely different approach. The tofu is fermented for only a few days in a brine already fermented for a long while until stinky, with amaranth plants and more. A book much longer than this could easily be devoted exclusively to the topic of fermented tofu. A common soil bacteria, Bacillus subtilis, is typically found on beans, and under the stress of heat when beans are cooked, it forms spores that can survive boiling temperatures. If beans are kept warm after draining, B. subtilis spontaneously develops, giving rise to Japanese natto, Korean chogukgang, Thai and Burmese lunao, Nagaland akhoni, some Chinese doji, and related soybean ferments across Asia. The same organism is involved in the fermentation of African lotus beans into seasonings eaten across West Africa, known by regional names including dawa dawa, saubala, diru, and many others. Bacillus subtilis yields alkaline byproducts, giving these ferments a characteristic ammonia-like smell, which can be faint or strong. The bacteria can produce copious, stringy, mucilaginous biofilms, most pronounced with soybeans, which people unfamiliar with natto frequently find daunting. Grains and beans are seeds, as are cacao, coffee, and vanilla, all of which also involve fermentation in their processing. Cacao pods are opened after harvesting, and the contents of the pods are removed, sweet, fleshy pulp encasing each of the cacao beans. This pulp spontaneously ferments, breaking it down, altering the biochemistry and flavor of the beans, and enabling them to be easily separated. The first stage of the cacao fermentation, when the pulp is juicy and sweet, is dominated by yeast. As the pulp ferments and juice drips off the beans, the environment becomes more alcoholic and aerobic, encouraging a proliferation of acetobacter. Similarly, coffee beans are each encased in a fruity berry, and after harvest, these beans typically undergo a spontaneous fermentation that develops flavor and enables the beans to be easily separated from the pulp. Both cacao and coffee fermentation can range from purely incidental to quite elaborate. Vanilla is fermented and stored as intact pods, and the entire pods are used as a flavoring. Fermenting vanilla is one of the most heavenly aromas I have ever encountered. Vegetables. Vegetables are fermented most commonly in temperate regions with limited growing seasons. The fermentation serves to acidify the vegetables, which preserves them, sometimes for extended periods, and keeps them safe. There is some confusion about the distinction between fermented vegetables and pickled vegetables. A pickle is anything preserved in an acidic environment, so all fermented vegetables are pickles. But there are also pickles that are not directly fermented, utilizing vinegar, which is previously fermented and, in the case of pickling, generally applied hot to acidify vegetables. Ferments of cabbage, radishes, and cucumbers are most prominent, but many different vegetables such as turnips, mustard greens, bamboo shoots, carrots, cauliflowers, onions, and much more are fermented, and any vegetable can be. Plants all host lactic acid bacteria, and when they are submerged in liquid or very tightly packed, thus creating an anaerobic condition, the lactic acid bacteria come to dominate. Salt is generally used in vegetable fermentation, but not in every case. A wide range of other seasonings may be used, or none. Mushrooms, fruits, often unripe, tea leaves, and herbs are fermented using similar techniques. Olives are frequently fermented to detoxify flavor and preserve them. Sauerkraut is typically made by the dry salting method, in which chopped or shredded vegetables are salted and sometimes pounded or massaged until the salt draws enough juices to submerge vegetables without adding any water. An alternative method is to submerge vegetables in a brine solution, which vary in saltinities and typically spiced. Wow, that was a sentence. Okay. Sorry about that. I will fix that in a second. What I was gonna say is that I love krauts and that it came later. I didn't like them originally. took me a while. And I still can't say that I love sauerkraut, but actually, like, traditionally made sauerkraut is actually very nice. Good night, Casey. Have good sleeps. Overlay did not like my use of the type of parentheses. Also, I absolutely failed in saying salinities. It took me like 3 or 4 times after I was done being on mute before I was even able to say it correctly to myself. An alternative method is to submerge vegetables in a brine solution with varying salinities and typically spiced. Sometimes the brine is reused in some traditions repeatedly over long periods. Kimchi is Korean-style fermented vegetables made in great variety and generally involves a hybrid process in which vegetables are brined for a day or so, drained, and then mixed with a rice or fruit-based spice paste, or sometimes a lighter spiced brine for subsequent fermentation. It is 8:30, I swear to God. I know that injuries happen late at night too, so it's inescapable. But also, geez freaking A. Like, freaking loud as hell. Shit. Any style of pickled or fermented vegetable can be used as a condiment, and most condiments involve fermentation, either directly or via the use of vinegars. Chilies are frequently fermented into hot sauces and pastes. Sometimes they are fermented along with beans grown with aspergillus and related fungi, as in Korean gochujang and Sichuan doubanjiang. Flavorful mustards are made by soaking mustard seeds in residual brine from fermented vegetables. Ketchups, relishes, salsas, chutneys, curtidos, and virtually any condiment can be enhanced by fermentation, even if it is typically vinegared rather than fermented. Sometimes drying vegetables in the sun occurs at various stages of the fermentation process. Frequently, vegetables are wilted in the sun prior to fermentation, in some cases for many days, such as Japanese takyuan, where whole daikon radishes are sun-dried until pliable. Sometimes vegetables are sun-dried repeatedly during the process, as with fuchai and kaibiao. Some fermented vegetables are sun-dried after fermentation for dry storage and used in rehydrated forms, such as Nepali gundrak. Vegetables may also be fermented in higher proportions of brine so that the brine can be used as a base for cold soups, as in Korean water kimchi. Vegetables are also fermented as infusions, where rather than the vegetables themselves, the brine in which they are fermented is the primary product. One example of this is Ukrainian and Russian bitkvas, delicious to drink or used as a base to borscht. Another is Indian kanye, fermented from carrots and mustard seeds. Many fermentations themselves, or the byproducts of fermentation or other food processes, are used as media for pickling vegetables. Japanese pickling, collectively known as tsukemono, is particularly diverse in this regard. Nukazuke are made in a bed primarily composed of rice bran, while kazuzuke are fermented in the decomposed rice residue of sake making. Shoyu, or soy sauce, miso, amazake, koji, and of course vinegar are all used for pickling vegetables. Nukadoko, a pickling bed composed mostly of rice bran, takes about a week to develop and requires frequent mixing while adding and removing starter vegetables daily. Once the nukadoko is established, it can be used to pickle more vegetables indefinitely, so long as it receives regular care and feeding. In Japan, many families cherish their nukadoko, and it is not unusual for the fermentation to be passed from generation to generation. Milk. Milk is and always has been consumed in fermented forms much more than fresh. Because milk is so extremely perishable unless kept cold, the sweet liquid milk so widely available in our time was generally not available beyond the farms where the animals were milked until refrigeration became widespread in the 20th century. For thousands of years that people have been raising animals for their milk, they have been fermenting milk to preserve it. Yogurt, kefir, and all the many other localized styles of fermenting milk acidify it, keeping it safe and slowing its breakdown. These ferments start with whole milk or sometimes skimmed milk, in which the milk fats that naturally separate by floating to the top as cream in unhomogenized cow's milk, but not goat or sheep milk, have been skimmed off. A given amount of milk ferments into the same amount of fermented milk. In cheeses and in butter, a portion of liquid is removed. With butter, before churning, cream is sometimes fermented. Buttermilk is, classically, the byproduct of this process. Cheeses use various coagulants to separate milk solids and fats from the thinner, waterier whey. These coagulants include acidity from vinegar, citrus, soured whey, or spontaneous fermentation with heat and/or time. A wide array of botanicals including thistles, nettles, and fig leaves, and rennet, a complex of enzymes found in the stomachs of infant ruminant animals and now also produced by fungi and genetically modified bacteria. Cheeses are frequently eaten fresh after coagulation and draining, unfermented, but fermentation preserves the cheese longer and develops exciting flavors. Therefore, most cheeses are fermented, and the denser they are, the longer they can be fermented and stored. Cheeses exhibit an incredible variety in textures and flavors, all made from the same basic ingredient. Many different variables determine the characteristics of each cheese, but among the most important is the question of fermentation. Which communities of organisms develop, and how do they alter the flavor, aromatics, and texture of the cheese? Most cheese is made from milk, either whole fat or skimmed, but some cheese, such as Italian ricotta and Norwegian brunost, are made not from milk but from the whey that is the byproduct of cheesemaking. Alternative plant-based cheeses and spreads, made from ingredients including nuts, seeds, and beans, are a relatively new frontier of fermentation, with widespread experimentation and notable improvement of techniques and products over time. Meat and fish. Meat and fish have been fermented in various ways, frequently to preserve them, but sometimes to break them down into their essence, such as fish sauces and related amino sauces or garums, that can be made from any kind of protein using koji. Until our time of widespread freezers and refrigerators, people relied upon a variety of strategies to preserve meat, including salting, drying, smoking, and fermentation. Frequently, several of these methods are applied in combination. For instance, dry cured sausage involves salting, fermentation, drying, and in some cases smoking, while Japanese katsuobushi, bonito flakes, uses smoking, drying, and fermentation without any added salt. As a side note, garum is a classical Roman name for fermented fish sauce, which has come to be used first by the influential Copenhagen restaurant Noma, I believe, to describe koji-based fermented seasonings similar to soy sauce but made with different substrates, including meat as well as insects, sea creatures, and even vegetable bases. Confusingly, classic Roman garum was not made with koji. Katsuobushi is so hard and dry that it is shaved using a device similar to a wood planer. It is made from skipjack tuna, which is simmered, smoked, partially dried, and then inoculated with a koji cousin, Aspergillus glaucus, and kept in a humid space for the fungus to grow on the fish. After some weeks of fermentation, the tuna is further dried and then further fermented repeatedly over the course of several weeks. Anytime meat is salted or dried, the salt absorption and drying occur over time, and a certain amount of fermentation occurs in the meantime. Though the fermentation may be incidental to the preservation of the meat, it can tenderize and impart distinctive flavor. In certain cases, fermentation is central to the preservation, such as in salamis and other dry-cured sausages, which are frequently made with starter cultures and kept in warm conditions for the first few days of curing for rapid acidification. A challenge of relying on fermentation alone to preserve meat and fish is that flesh has very little in the way of carbohydrates, the nutrients that can be fermented into acids. So without adding carbohydrates, acidification potential is quite limited. In dry curing sausage, typically carbohydrates are introduced into the mix in the form of vegetables such as garlic, peppers, or herbs, grains, or some form of sugar. Across much of Asia, meat and fish are mixed with rice, along with raw and sometimes fermented seasonings, so that the fermentation of the rice can produce acids to preserve the meat and fish, from Japan nazurezushi to Filipino bao-lo, or balao, and Thai nayam. I'm butchering these pronunciations. Far northern climates have their own unique way of fermenting fish, marine mammals, and birds. Frequently, no specific salting or drying is involved, and the mostly cold but fluctuating temperatures result in periods of fermentation and an enzymatic breakdown between periods of freezing. In the cool but moderate temperatures of the Faroe Islands in the North Atlantic, ranging between just barely freezing and roughly Earth temperatures, 55 degrees Fahrenheit or 13 degrees Celsius, sheep legs are hung with no specific treatment in sheds called kjaljors, with gaps between the wallboards to enable the salty ocean breeze to simultaneously dry and salt the meat into skerpkjøttet. To conclude this brief summary of the scope of fermentation, anything we can possibly eat can be fermented in a variety of different ways. The possibilities are limitless. As a rule, people ferment foods that are abundant in their environment. rather than foods that are rare or precious. Some today are turning to fermentation as a strategy for making use of food that would otherwise go to waste. In the context of our ridiculously wasteful food systems, this is fermenting what is abundant. I'm going back a little bit because there are some pictures that have words attached underneath them. Anya is fermented fish that I encountered and enjoyed in rural Guizhou of southwestern China. River carp are scaled, gutted, and salted for a couple of days. After rinsing, they are stuffed and covered with a paste of sticky rice mixed with chili flakes, ginger, Sichuan peppercorns, and the rice residue from fermenting rice alcohol, then fermented for months. Bubbling conceptions. These many varied applications of fermentation and more developed in different places over time. Fermentation is an integral part of the skills of subsistence. Fermentation is an integral part of the skills of subsistence. Fermentation is an integral part of skills of subsistence. That sentence is a pain in the ass. Fermentation is an integral part of the skills of subsistence. There we go. So that was this is the last 15. I think. Yes, because we've almost been running for 3 hours. So we're gonna do one more 5-minute, and then we're gonna raid. We're gonna do one 5-minute break, one more 15 read, and then we're gonna raid. That's the order. Okay, we'll start this section again at the end of this break. let us go into our last one, and then we will raid out. Or maybe talk a little bit, and then we'll raid out, maybe, if people feel inclined to stick around. These many varied applications of fermentation and more developed in different places over time. Fermentation is an integral part of the skills of subsistence. We know that people everywhere have long used fermentation to preserve and enjoy food, but it's hard to say just how people may have conceptualized it. The transformations wrought by fermentation have been understood to be mystical and magical across human cultures and across time. Hamid Dairar writes that many of the fermented foods of his homeland, Sudan, carry a sacred halo said to ward off the evil eye, which is blamed for causing strange diseases. In Lithuania, where my father's family migrated from, people who traditionally relied heavily on fermented vegetables worshipped Rogusis, the god of pickled food. Because fermentation was mysterious and so little understood, a great deal of ritual and superstition developed around it. Alcohol in particular has inspired much iconography, ceremony, and expressive art, presumably because of its unique altering qualities. The ancient Mesopotamians worshipped a brewing goddess, Nkasi. The Egyptian Book of the Dead addresses prayers to the givers of bread and beer. And in the Jewish religion, we frequently recite a prayer giving thanks to the creator of the fruit of the vine as we drink wine, the same sacrament that transubstantiates into the blood of Jesus Christ in the Roman Catholic Mass. Products of fermentation figure prominently in creation myths, oral storytelling, and legends in many varied locales. A Middle English term for yeast was Gottesgut. Historically, and to this day, many artisanal products of fermentation, cheeses, beers, wines, Korean jams, and surely more, have been produced by monks, nuns, and others who consider themselves servants of God. Beyond widespread recognition, let me try that sentence again. Beyond widespread recognition of fermentation as a mystical phenomenon, how did people seeking greater knowledge and understanding conceptualize the process? Despite the fact that fermentation practices have been highly developed and well documented in China for thousands of years, biochemist H.T. Huang, who wrote a 700-page opus on the history of Chinese fermentation, observes a lack of interest in Chinese showed in the underlying phenomenon. In 1st century AD Rome, Pliny the Elder wrote the encyclopedic Natural History, in which he describes many types of wines and breads, with some very general observations about how they are made. He expresses harsh judgments about alcohol as a liquid which deprives man of his reason and drives him to frenzy and to the commission of 1,000 crimes. Yeah, that sounds like Pliny. However, he makes no attempt to explain the process of fermentation or what forces cause it to occur. The English word fermentation appears to have first been used by medieval alchemists. The Oxford English Dictionary, OED, in its first definition of fermentation as the operation of leavening on dough or on saccharine liquids, explains The features superficially recognizable in the process in these instances are effervescent or internal commotion and a resulting alteration of its properties. Before the rise of modern chemistry, the term fermentation was applied to all chemical changes exhibiting these characters. In alchemy, it was the name of an internal change supposed to be produced in metals by a ferment, operating after the manner of leaven. Alchemy today has come to be understood loosely as any process of transformation or creation seen as magical, including fermentation. In fact, the word alchemy is frequently used in the names of contemporary fermentation enterprises and books. Historically, alchemy has sought to understand and apply various transformational phenomena. These ideas and practices developed over millennia and across continents and civilizations. The word derives from Arabic. Simultaneously, esoteric and aspiring to be practical, alchemy's ultimate quest was for the mythical philosopher's stone, imagined to turn iron into gold and to produce an elixir of long life. Alchemists developed many ideas about transmutations ranging from metallurgy to the spontaneous generation of life, but they tended towards secrecy, and their writings were often cryptic. The promise of cheap gold and healing elixirs gave rise to unscrupulous, exploitive promoters, selling counterfeit gold and Oh my goodness. The promise of cheap gold and healing elixirs gave rise to unscrupulous, exploitative promoters, selling counterfeit gold and supposed panaceas, and helping to establish for alchemy a reputation for fraudulence. The first known usage of the word fermentation in English, according to the OED, is in this context from Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, written around 1386. The word appears in a satirical story about alchemy called The Canon's Yeoman's Tale, in which the servant of an alchemist lord tells all about the lord's practices. The canon is made out to be a con artist. He hath betrayed folks many times. The yeoman lists dozens of substances and plants that he was required to collect and process in different ways, and then recounts mixing them together in our cementing and fermentation. This is the first known use of cementing, too, in the sense of combining ingredients and mixing them together into something cohesive. And here the meaning of fermentation is quite broad. The vague process, as the OED described, of internal commotion and the resulting alteration of its properties. Within decades, there are documented usages of the word fermentation in the familiar food and beverage context, but it's curious that it first signified transformation more broadly. And of course, the word is still widely used as a metaphor for any kind of bubbly, active transformational process. Fermentation came to be recognized as a biological phenomenon only after a series of developments known as the Scientific Revolution, which occurred during the 16th to 18th centuries. The scientific method began to be articulated, and Tony van Leeuwenhoek first observed microscopic life under a microscope, and chemistry became established as a science, quite distinct from alchemy. Chemistry was the dominant science of the day, offering the potential to understand the composition and process of everything, life included. When faced with microscopic evidence of the presence of microbial life in fermentation, the chemistry establishment of the day argued that it was the decomposition of the microbes that caused the fermentation reaction, rather than the life process of the microbes themselves. That fermentation was indeed caused by the microbes witnessed through the microscope's lens was proven in the 1850s by a series of experiments performed by French chemist Louis Pasteur, who started to study fermentation in order to improve production of the local beetroot alcohol. Some chemists contested Pasteur's early studies, but the burgeoning alcohol industry of the time readily incorporated the insights of Pasteur and others based on results, and fermentation rapidly came to be accepted as a biological process. Not long after, as bacteria began to be associated with disease, the biodiversity of most traditional fermentation began to unsettle early microbiologists. They sought to identify which organisms were functionally necessary for fermentation so they could get rid of the rest. Pure culture starters, isolated strains propagated in laboratories, started becoming available for the first time. Most of what the science of microbiology learned about fermentation for the first 100+ years was based on isolating singular organisms and then studying them, or sometimes the interactions between two. The complexity of microbial communities as they exist everywhere on Earth, including in traditional fermented foods, was not fully appreciated until recent decades. We are beginning to recognize it mostly thanks to polymerase chain reactions, PCR technology, which enables researchers to amplify and sequence DNA and has led to the ever greater ability to understand the extent of biodiversity, not only in traditional fermentations but also in our bodies, in the soil, and everywhere in our environment. Current research is using PCR analysis to document the diversity of microbial communities in sourdough starters, cheese rinds, and many other fermentations, and is gaining insight into some of the dynamics in these complex communities. The incredible microbial world that is being increasingly revealed within and around us is extremely fascinating, but it is important to keep in mind that none of the traditional processes of fermentation was designed according to known principles. Each developed based on results, and the principles that have been formulated have come only from studying and trying to understand fermentation as it is practiced. Biological compulsions. Jeez. Biological compulsions. Fermentation practices developed, spread, and were elaborated for millennia without the benefit of microbiology. Yet the fundamental insight that fermentation is a biological process, along with the growing understandings that the emergent tools of science have enabled, has shed great light on processes that have always been shrouded in a certain amount of mystery. Using this newfound microbiological illumination, let's explore foundational fermentation concepts. Safety. Because bacteria and other microorganisms have been so strongly associated with disease, many people approach fermentation with great trepidation, imagining that it is potentially dangerous. To the contrary, fermentation is a strategy for food safety above all else. What good are preserved foods, or any foods really, if eating them feels risky? Living and eating do entail risk, of course, but generally foods become safer as a result of fermentation. The fermentation byproducts that dominate in most mature fermented foods and beverages, alcohol and lactic and acetic acids, all inhibit the growth of the most common organisms responsible for foodborne illnesses. There are certainly examples of people getting sick from fermentations done improperly in some critical ways. Generally, the most potentially dangerous problems occur in fermentations of high protein, most often animal source substrates. But I can testify that in my decades of adventurous fermentation, tasting, and experimentation, and tasting other people's experimentations, I have never gotten ill from any fermented food or beverage other than a few times from an excess of alcohol. I want to pause and say that anecdotal evidence is not proof of scientific method, but there is a certain amount of trust that comes with eating fermented foods. As long as you trust the person who's making the fermentation, I wouldn't spontaneously trust somebody's fermentation without testing it and checking it myself personally, doing the nose test, checking to see with like acidic test strips and that sort of thing to make sure that the food is safe. And always, always, always trust your own senses before trusting anyone else's senses, because some foods will still upset somebody's stomach, whereas in another person, they'll be perfectly fine. To continue. When fermentation is done properly, with a clear understanding of the environment that is required and some attention to details, it is perfectly safe. The vegetables need to be kept submerged. The fermenting alcohol needs to be protected from oxygen. The kombucha needs access to oxygen and some acidity. The yogurt needs to stay above body temperature, and ancestral ferments should generally not be wrapped tightly in plastic. Learn from others and do your research in books and online. And that appears to be the last of our spreads. I am currently on page 101 of 136. So we will finish the last of this book on our next stream, and then go into depression cooking. I want to thank you all so much once again for coming and sitting with me as I read this incredibly interesting book on the history of fermentation. I'm going to look for somebody for us to read into. If anyone has any suggestions, please let me know. I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share as soon as I remember how. There we go. Let's see who is available for a raid. I have a couple ideas. Let's see. I do see that Nap is still streaming. And Alan is still streaming. I think we might just go ahead and raid into Alan. Alan is a very familiar, very well-loved reader, not only by my community, but by the community at large. I'm just checking to see how long he's into his stream before we go in there. He's going to be like, oh no, why am I hearing myself? 1 hour in. That's excellent. We have plenty of time. Okay. Give me just a second to get us over there. I said I would do it last time, but I didn't, so I'm going to do it this time. Give me 1 sec. We hope you enjoyed your stay. It's good to have you with us, even if it's just for the day. We hope you enjoyed your stay. Outside the sun is setting. Seems like everyone's far away. It's good to have you with us, even if it's for the day. Thank you so much for coming in. I hope you remember to take your meds, have a good sip of water, go outside every so often, and if you have any fuzzy, feathery, or scaly friends, that you will give them a kiss from me. Take care.